Our guest today is a singer, actress, author, and host of the Broken Limelight Celebrity True Crime Podcast. Ooh. From fabulous Las Vegas, please give a warm CounterCultureWISE welcome to Didi West.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having
me. Oh, it's wonderful to have you.
Thank you for coming on. It's great to talk to you again.
Yeah. Before we dive into your fascinating life, and I'm sure we're going to fill an hour really quickly, let's give our listener all the details that they will need to find you on the interwebs.
Okay, to find me, the easiest way is to go to didiwestmusic.com, but I'm also on all the social media, so you can go to facebook.com/DidiWestLV, or Instagram, my handle is I'm Didi West. I'm also on TikTok @DidiWestLV. And of course, I'm on YouTube. It's youtube.com/Didi West.
All right. She's everywhere, folks, everywhere. And of course, all of those links will be available at CounterCultureWise.com. So make sure you visit there and you can just click on them instead of typing them, which makes your life easier and mine.
It does indeed.
Okay, I'll start off and then I'll pretty much let Jim drive since he actually knows you in person. I'm sure you have a lot to talk about. You have published a book, Broken Limelight, shocking true crime stories about celebrities. And was this based on your podcast or the other way around? And tell me how you got interested in this.
Yeah, actually, I started the podcast first. It was because I found myself really fascinated in these stories for years. I've just kind of been Googling them. I hear them all over the place. Crazy stories about people like Charlize Theron and Jennifer Hudson, who you don't typically hear about having true crime. So that I was telling everybody who would listen, anybody at all, and I loved hearing myself talk about it. So I decided I'm either going to do a YouTube channel or a podcast, and I ended up doing a podcast, just audio, just because I'm a full-time mom as well. So it was half the editing. And
you have kids? I thought you were like 19.
I get that a lot. Actually, I'm 32.
Wow, she's a lot. Girl, you hold that, man.
She looks much younger. Yeah.
Yeah. So and then about a year into it, I had maybe 50 cases, and I decided to write a book. I did really, really thorough investigations, and I know there's a lot of people who wanted to support me and they wanted to hear the stories, but they're just not podcast people. So I was like, you know what? It's the same exact story. All I have to do is put it on paper, and
I'll
then
just be my own podcast.
Yeah. Transcript.
Wow.
Almost, yeah.
Wow. Okay. So Dish, the Charlize and what's her name? I'm sorry. I'm
Jennifer Hudson.
Old lady. What are the true crimes they were involved in?
Actually, it's within their family, but it heavily affected them. Charlize Theron is from South Africa, and her father was an alcoholic, and he also was kind of a he had guns in his home, and he came home drunk one night and just started shooting at his wife and daughter. Charlize Theron was 15 years old.
Whoa.
So her and her mother hid in a bedroom, and they shut the door, and he started shooting through the door, and her mother, just upon quick thinking, got up, grabbed her own gun, and shot back through the door and killed him in self-defense. And because it was self-defense, there were no charges against her.
Wow.
A lot of trauma for a young girl.
Yes.
And, I know she's from South Africa. I believe it is. I'm assuming this happened in the U.S. because they really wander around with guns much and other
Actually,
kind of things.
I don't know. I think it happened in I can't remember the name of the town, but I think it happened in her home country, because I don't think because she was 15. I don't think she moved here till she was like 19, early 20s.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay, and the other story.
Jennifer Hudson, actually, it's a really sad story.
Now she's the one who was
American Idol.
Win, but came in like second on American Idol, but was the one that went forward and became a huge star, won an Oscar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was in Dreamgirls.
Yeah.
That was great. She's great in that movie.
And then she went on to be one of the judges on America's Got Talent. So Jennifer Hudson has a sister who was in an abusive relationship, and her sister's boyfriend, basically, she broke up with him. He came back and murdered her and their child, who was an 8-year-old boy.
Oh my
God.
She
lost her nephew in the process as well. It was very sad story, and it happened kind of in the midst of her fame. So she actually has taken a lot of the money that she's earned and contributed it in a foundation for domestic violence and like children in these situations.
Wow. Wow. So that's one of those silver lining things. What a tragic life.
And
Yeah.
I've
I think you think that these people are beyond that kind of stuff happening to them, but Jennifer Hudson's situation is very real.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So how do you stumble upon these stories? How do you find them?
I have no idea how it started, to be honest with you. But I started digging really deep, and there's a few sources that they do not fail. Like Vanity Fair is full of these stories.
That's
and
true.
investigate it very thoroughly. So if I follow them on Facebook, a lot of times I'll hear stories from like 30, 40 years ago that I'd never heard.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I think that of all the stories that I've listened to a couple of your podcasts, the story that bugs me the most, and it was the one that had the most publicity. Growing up, starting off as a stand-up comic, Bill Cosby was my hero. I thought he was just, he was the be all and end all of
So
comedy.
broken
And
over
then,
Bill Cosby. I
and
don't
it's
know how to
like,
feel.
and it's like I know he did these things. I can't deny it. I kept denying it until he admitted to having done it, as you mentioned yourself on the podcast. And it's like, wow, just wow.
So you're pretty young. You probably didn't grow up listening to him, and like he wasn't a big part of your childhood. Was it easier for you because you might have been a little bit more detached? Because us old folks, man, this broke our
Well,
heart.
she even interviewed one of his victims.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, tell me about that.
Yeah, I interviewed one of his victims. Her name is Lisa Lott Lublin, and she lives here in Las Vegas. And I think that's one thing a lot of people forget is Bill Cosby. He was a stand-up comedian as well, and he had a show here at what's now the Westgate. I believe it was called the International.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, right. So that was where Elvis Presley had his famous suite as well. So Bill Cosby actually stayed in that suite, and that happens to be where he abused a lot of women. He would invite them to his hotel under the guise that they were auditioning for something, and then they wouldn't remember anything after arriving. So I interviewed this woman. Her name is Lisa Lott Lublin, and basically in 1989, she was, I think, 19 years old, and she was a model. And as far as she knew, he didn't work with models, so she assumed he wanted her in a film. And he kind of coached her as well. He became like this mentor, and he did this with a lot of people to the point where he met Lisa's mother and her parents, and he would take her to award shows and introduce her as if she was his daughter. And this is how the grooming happened with a lot of people. He became more than just, I'm auditioning for you. He became part of your family, and he kind of accepted you as part of his family.
And that's a story they don't tell.
Nope. And that's the thing with a lot of these women, because they were under the influence and they don't really have clear memories of that night. They still 20 years later are just now starting to get flashbacks. And I think a lot of them, even they did through for like 20 years, for like in Lisa's instance, she didn't acknowledge that anything had happened to her. What she acknowledged was that she woke up in her house afterwards and was sick for like 2 or 3 days. And she couldn't explain it, but she had never had alcohol before. So she had alcohol for the first time there, and she assumed it must have been like alcohol poisoning or an alcohol allergy. It was a bad reaction. She didn't remember anything. So then for 20 years, she has a picture of Bill Cosby in her house, like where they're hugging, and she's telling people about it because they're like, oh, you know Bill Cosby. She had no idea until about 20, 25 years later when other women started speaking up. And by this point, she had talked to her current husband about it, and the story's kind of piecing together. You know what I mean? So it's really, really sad, but I feel like going back to your other question, like, yeah, I didn't grow up like everybody else did watching them. I mean, I grew up in the 90s, so I watched the Cosby Show. Of course, they were like reruns and stuff. It wasn't the same. I also feel like it's not the same. Not being a person of color, I feel like it hit them very hard because Bill Cosby was one of the first actors to change the stereotype.
Right.
He did. Yeah.
Right.
He broke a lot of
Broke a lot of
lot
barriers.
of ceilings, a lot of glass ceilings.
Yeah, he kind of opened the door for Black people to start playing the roles of intelligent, eloquent people. It was at the time in the 60s, Black people were still being cast as maids and chauffeurs and comic reliefs. They weren't
Servants, basically.
they had no depth.
Except for the Jeffersons. I mean,
But that was 10 years later.
Okay, that's true. That's true.
That was
Yeah. So it was I Spy, I believe it was called, the sitcom
Yeah.
that he was, and he
Yeah.
was intelligent. He spoke multiple languages.
Yeah.
And he made everybody see, like, not only can he do it, he's amazing at it.
Oh, I forgot about I Spy. I've never watched that.
I
Yeah,
think
I totally
we did.
forgot about that.
Yeah, he was in with Robert Culp.
Yeah, that's way before both of our times. So it's like,
Oh, I
no,
don't
no,
know.
you're right. So he was
Yeah.
one of the first Black men, much less Black person, that was portrayed as intelligent,
Yeah,
multilingual.
that one and Julia a few years later with I forget the actress's name, but that was the first time a Black woman had been the lead on a TV show. I remember that clearly from my childhood. Diane
Interesting.
Carroll.
Yeah, see, I
Wow.
had no.
But I don't want to get too far off track. We're not talking about Diane Carroll.
Okay, so he was an icon to both the Black community and to those of us who were young enough that, with the family-friendly comedy, which is kind of
And
a double irony.
Yeah, America's Dad.
He was in everybody's television sets being the father in our homes,
Yeah.
People have a father in their home probably fantasize that he was their father,
Yeah, no matter what
absolutely.
color. It's
Absolutely,
like, I wished he was my dad,
Wonderful father. And I think
Yeah.
that's another thing that made it really hard for us to believe it. But I feel like also people like Lisa Lott Lublin, when she met him in person, she probably even thought this guy is a father figure. But I think that's another thing to keep in mind. He is a trained, skilled actor, and he is a father. Anybody would fall for that.
Yeah.
Did you get into at all what drove him to that? Is there anything out there, or do we just he's a monster and leave it there?
I think so. I think he's just a monster. I also think, this is my personal theory, that when people come into fame and they come into power, I think they get carried away. They take things, I'm entitled sometimes. That's what I personally think happened to Bill Cosby.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a theme that runs through your series. I mean, you've got Bill Clinton with Monica Lewinsky, you've got Phil Spector, brilliant producer, absolute kook, and they achieve some kind of fame and or power, and it'll just go to their heads. And I've seen it in celebrities, sports figures, politicians. They believe themselves to be of a different strata, of a different way of being, and they appoint themselves more freedom than the average schmo like you or me. I think that's definitely part of it.
So outside of like actual, like some of the domestic abuse and actual murders and whatnot, did you find like you could do your podcast for years just based on the Me Too movement?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've got fodder basically for as long as you need it, right?
Yeah, and I've thought about doing something on the Me Too movement, but it's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hollywood is garbage. It just is.
It's become that way.
So how do you keep yourself? Because I mean, there are folks who have been talking about this for decades. I mean, you look at Corey, what's his name? Feldman. What's his? Yeah. And everybody thought he was a kook, but it turned out, he knew more than people were willing to admit. How do you separate yourself or find, okay, this is the actual happenings, this is the truth versus, some kook that's. I'm still struggling with the whole Michael Jackson thing. So
that's why I haven't covered Michael Jackson yet, because I don't feel prepared yet.
Yeah.
That hurts me. Like you were saying with Bill Cosby, it's hard, and I feel like I need to, for my own being a good person, I need to investigate that and really understand the capacity of everything he did.
I highly recommend you look up Razor Fist. He dived deep into this and listen to what he has to say about it, and then compare it, because I think Finding Neverland was so biased. And there's a lot of untruths in there, and he actually spoke directly to that he's a little angry, but he also does his homework. So I say,
Razor.
watch both.
Razor
Razor Fist. Yeah, you can find him on YouTube.
Yeah, I really like to challenge my own bias and
Sure.
society bias. I really try to keep an open mind with these kind of things, and I do feel that way about Finding Neverland. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I think so.
It's not that I don't believe them. It's that people get angry and you say the worst. You speak from the heart, and I like to try to see everybody's perspective for the same reason. I like to look at the emotions, yes, and what's on paper, what we can prove. It's hard. It's really hard, but that's why I want to watch both. I feel like, yeah, I might not agree with some of these, but I've got to hear it.
Yeah, and a lot of times the truth is somewhere in the middle. My take on this, because I struggled with this too, because growing up as an 80s child, you use the F word on him. He's a, and I was a rocker chick. I wrote Ozzy on my knuckles. I did the black eyeliner and fingernails and all that. So Michael Jackson wasn't my thing. As I got older, it's like I kind of rediscovered his music, and he's brilliant and amazing, and I just love him. And
I'm dating myself. I saw him with the Jackson 5 on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Oh wow!
Live.
Yeah, and Sullivan
That's
long out of the picture.
that's how well formerly gray-haired I am.
So. Formerly, and yeah, so he was there for the moon landing too. So
not a lie.
My mom was barely born, just so we're clear. And it's yeah, so it's a different thing when you discover them after the fact, and you go back and then you start getting the history. I'm also a huge Norm Macdonald fan, and you can see that okay, he was always teasing Michael Jackson about the kid diddling and all that. I landed hard on I think he's innocent. I really do. Really? For a lot of reasons, but it's something you have to
not to say the man was sane by any stretch of the imagination.
I mean you can't be and this might actually speak to you in the next segment. You can't be that talented in so many ways and not be a little off. And I've noticed this with every gifted artist, from my husband to pretty much everybody I know in Vegas. The more gifted you are, the more you have in your talent stack, a little more detached from just normal reality.
I don't
not that everybody's bats. I'm not saying
just
that.
To give myself just use myself as an example. I'm not as rational as I could be. I fly off the handle. I don't reason things through. I'm more of an artsy fartsy type, and I accept that. I'm a challenge to Melanie sometimes.
And while I do have artistic endeavors from acting to singing to writing and all that, I'm also a math teacher, so I have that linear, logical, and I'm like, come on, guys, let's get back in here.
She's weird.
You deal with that, and I've noticed that from Freddie Mercury to just Prince, everybody who's just insanely talented on multiple aspects, they're a little kooky. They have these things, and I think it's because having that much talent, it has got to be hard to wield. It's got to be hard, and that's how they deal with it. That's why we lose people like Kurt Cobain, and we lose people. I can think of like 6,000 of them right now, so I don't want to just start listing off names, but I find it so hard that these people tend to be used, and so you take someone who's got this insane talent and has this amazing ability, but not necessarily the ability to adapt. And then you'll get somebody like, Weinstein or whatever, and they'll use them. And I think that's what happened to Michael. I think that's what happened to Marilyn Monroe. I think that's what happened to Elvis.
Definitely
and I think we're seeing a lot more of that today. And those who call it out, from Scott Baio, who's been called a kook, to Corey, that they call him a kook. When they point it out, they're the ones who get discarded, not the people who go along to get along. Yeah. Every time I see Meryl Streep calling Weinstein, a god and how great he is, I just throw up in my mouth a little bit. And it's like, why do these people help these monsters along. And this comes back to what you do. You must find a lot of times, have you ever gotten a story where you're like, okay, this is pretty standard. This guy's a monster. He's a creep. He's a jerk. And then you find out how much help he got along the way. Do you
He was
ever
aided
find
and
yourself
abetted. There's no doubt about it.
losing faith in humanity?
Yeah.
Woody Allen.
Yeah.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you.
Allen, they love him.
Yeah.
No, I love his work. I don't love him as a human being, but I
And
like
But he
his.
gets away with it.
They defend what he's done.
Yeah.
Like it's not wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I mean, because these people have worked with him, and there's a certain amount of prestige in being an actor in a Woody Allen film. It's that simple.
So this is something that comes up a lot. How do you separate the art from the artist, especially when they're child diddling monsters?
That's a really good question. And that's currently where I'm trying to figure out about Michael Jackson. I get it a lot with Woody Allen. The other one is R. Kelly, because R. Kelly, people, he's got a lot of not just good music, he has gospel music.
Yeah.
He has that people played at family barbecues. He wrote I Believe I Can Fly. You know what I mean?
Right.
These are
Yeah.
songs that he wrote.
Yeah. And these are iconic songs. You still hear them at graduations,
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's really hard. I mean, I personally, but I feel like I'm personally angry with R. Kelly, and I can't stop picturing that he's continuously making money off of people that he's exploited, because he also has had concerts where he had women in cages, and they thought they were going to be able to get out, and then they couldn't, or they thought they wouldn't be seen nude. They thought they were going to be covered, and then they weren't. Like, they were exploited. And this is where it hurts me that he's making money off of us streaming him,
Yeah.
But then there's like Elvis and Michael Jackson, that it's like, while I'm angry at them, I don't connect the music to the acts they've allegedly done.
Right.
But maybe it's because they're not singing about bumping and grinding like R. Kelly is. I don't know.
There's that. Yeah.
So one of the episodes you talk, and by the way, you can, if you want us to edit this part out or not talk about it, I'm totally cool with it, of course. But you had your own run-in that you talked about on one of your podcasts.
Oh yeah,
What
no,
happened?
His name was Ken Kratz. Ken Kratz.
I love that you can't remember the name. That's a good start.
Because it happened to me. I think I kind of suppress it a little bit.
Yeah, that's exactly why I said that.
Yeah. So Ken Kratz was the prosecutor in the Stephen Avery case. So if anybody's seen the show on Netflix, Making a Murderer, you know who Ken Kratz is. He was the prosecutor who he was doing everything in his power to throw Stephen Avery in jail and like make him look guilty. Big older guy with glasses and a really high pitched voice. Turns out he's also a musician. Super random. And he was living here in Las Vegas, at least for a time, and he contacted me through it was like a social media site for musicians called Band Mix, I believe. And he reached out to me saying he has a band. They called it live band karaoke, where basically this band was going to have people sing karaoke, but they wanted backup singers and they wanted a professional singer to fill in. I don't know. It was like, okay, sounds interesting. Send me the information. So he sent me the information by email, and it was like a whole brochure, like not a brochure, like a PowerPoint brochure kind of thing. But it was almost like what you would use to sell the band. Like, this is for parties. This is how much I charge. And I thought it was kind of weird. Nobody shows all that at an audition. Like, I hadn't auditioned yet. But anyway, we started texting to make plans for an audition, and he sent me a home address. And at first I was like, okay, well, sometimes bands practice at homes, but like, I've never met this person.
Right.
So that started like Googling him. And then
red flag.
Yeah, and that wasn't the first. The other thing was he got a little too personal too fast by like, he sent me a picture of himself playing with the band. This is me in the band. We've been doing this for years, and just talking. And then he sent me a picture of his wife, him and his wife at dinner. And he was like, this is my wife, Leah. She used to sing for our band, but her stage fright has gotten the best of us. And it was just a little too much. Like, we're not friends, but I've kind of assumed maybe, he's an older guy, and I don't know, maybe there's like a generational gap or something, that he's just extra friendly. Um, then when I started like worrying about going to his house and stuff, and he was talking way too much, I started Googling his name and his phone number because of what I do. I was like, I'm not going to be, I'd rather be paranoid, you know?
Right.
So I saw his email address that he had emailed me from was, I think, like Ken Kratz Law Firm at gmail.com, something like that. And I was like, that's interesting. He's a lawyer. And basically, I messaged a friend on Facebook who's like equally as cynical as I am and a little bit of a web sleuth.
Yeah.
And she went crazy with it. And we discovered Ken Kratz was from the Stephen Avery case. And I mean, I'm looking at the picture and it looks like the same guy. But also while we're investigating, we saw that there was Facebook groups and Reddits called Ken Kratz is a douchebag. Basically, there's websites dedicated to people who hate this guy. So then we were like, what if somebody's posing as him to make him look bad? But that's when we found the court documents from the Stephen Avery case, and they showed the email Ken Kratz Law Firm at gmail.com. So he's emailing me from the same email address that was in the court documents, which is weird, right?
Yeah.
That's
You think
odd.
you'd have a different
I
personal.
think you'd have a different one, right?
So then as like I started Googling him more, and I found Wikipedia articles and all of this talking about how he's got a lot of charges filed against him for harassing women, specifically by text message. Going over.
This Avery character was found innocent, right?
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking it up right now. It says he was convicted in 1985. After serving 18 years of a 32-year sentence, DNA exonerated him.
Yeah.
So this guy that is stalking you is the guy who put him away.
Yeah.
Nice
Yeah.
guy.
And not just that. So some of the charges against him were like so he would have a female client who she was suing her boyfriend for domestic abuse, and Ken Kratz is her lawyer. And then he would start texting her. Ken Kratz would text her and flirt with her and things like that. Now, one of these women, he showed up at her house and told her to give him oral sex or he was going to have the case thrown out.
Ew. Oh, God, I just want to puke.
And these are victims of domestic violence, you know?
Right.
So he knows.
So they're already messed up because of that, and then
He took
he
advantage.
wants to. That is the definition of exploit.
Exactly.
That's insane. That's absolutely nuts.
He did a lot of creepy stuff. Like, I guess he had a girlfriend who he went on a date with a girl. It wasn't a girlfriend. He went on it one date and he's told her like confidential information about a case that he was working on. And then after the date, he took her to an autopsy, like to show her. But he told her that he wanted her to wear a skirt and heels to the autopsy.
To an autopsy. Yeah, that's not creepy at all.
Right.
Criminy.
So this is like my cynical friend was like, well, maybe he knows you're into true crime and he wanted to impress you with this. And in my head, I'm like, I can't believe he wouldn't think I would talk about him on my podcast. You know? Wow. I was like, maybe he should Google the girls he goes out with.
I like that.
Wow.
Okay. So then what happened? I mean, did you BTFO? I mean,
I was very polite and I said, I'm really sorry, but I Googled you and I'm not comfortable moving forward. And I just block.
Oh, man, you just drew the line in the sand hard.
Might have saved your own life
You
that
might
day.
have. Yeah, you might very well have.
That's what I'm saying.
You know, I mean, that's all there is to it. You've got a lot.
Each other.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with the audio, but every time we talk, you're muted, which kind of stinks. So I'm trying not to talk when you're talking. So I have to be very careful about that, Jim.
Okay.
Are you on an Apple?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll edit this part out. Apple tends to mute you if anybody else is talking. I don't know if that's a setting you can change or not, but it's really annoying because it's like you're talking. See, I didn't hear what you just said.
I'll look into it.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll try to be very, very careful not to step on you. So, well, I'll edit that whole part out just so we're clear. I want to talk a little bit about you specifically because you are every darn where. And little birdie just told me that you might be opening for one of my cherished memory
A
bands from the
legendary metal
80s.
band you were going to be
The
opening
hair,
for. I'm
the song,
thrilled for
the
you.
junior high dances, Quiet Riot. Oh my God. Like, OMG. So this is big. Tell me about this gig.
Yeah, so I'm really excited. So we perform under my name, Didi West, but we are a 5-piece band. And yeah, we're performing at the Whiskey A Go Go on the Sunset Strip in Hollywood.
So,
On
so let's see. The Doors, Van Halen, Van Morrison, Didi West. I
I know.
mean, wow, wow.
Please
I mean,
invite us
I
to the
don't,
Star ceremony.
I'm
when
not
you do
going to
the handprints
fangirl
and the
over
whole
you,
thing.
okay? I'm not going to fangirl. You and I are friends. But I do have to admit, I'm very, very happy for you. I mean, that's amazing.
So tell me about this. I mean, your whole career, how you got into
Yeah,
the band,
definitely.
what kind of music you do. Let's dive. Let's do this.
Sure. Well, I started off doing theater in middle school, and I got into musicals. And then as I did the musicals, I kind of realized that I was veering towards the rock musicals all the time. And that's kind of when I started exploring performing with bands. So I started performing with bands in about 2018. And I actually struggle a lot with stage fright, but I'm kind of addicted to karaoke for the same reason. That's my practice. It's, low pressure,
Yeah.
but I work on it.
Yeah, me too.
And yeah, so now I sing in a band. I sing in Spanish and English, mostly pop and rock hits. We sing covers. My favorite to sing though is classic rock to like alternative rock. So like my idols are Ann Wilson from Heart, Janis Joplin, and up to like Paramore and No Doubt, things like that.
Right. I did want to point out that you are also a huge Beatles fan.
Oh,
Enough
yeah.
that you named your pets after band members. You have, if I remember correctly, on one of your arms, you have the Beatles as they appeared in the movie Yellow Submarine. Um,
So on my leg, actually, I have
oh, it's on your leg. That's right.
and on my arm, I have the Yellow Submarine.
Okay. Wow. So yeah, that was my favorite cartoon growing up. So
Me too.
This is my pencil cup.
Oh, I love it.
We actually had a salt and pepper shaker set that was a Blue Meanie and the
and
the-
Max.
and Max. Uh, somebody who shall remain nameless broke it. No, it was neither one of us, believe it or
No,
not.
it wasn't. It wasn't. I would have.
Somebody who we paid not to break things broke it. But I think we still have the Blue Meanie floating around here somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So you and I met. I think we were doing Jesus Christ Superstar, and I guess that's about the same time you must have been starting. That's one of the ultimate rock musicals, and I think that's about the time you also started branching off that way. Fortunate enough to work with you in a couple of shows. Another one was a music-based series of short plays written by Matt Martello, who I think he's a fantastic writer, and I love doing his work.
You guys did that at First Friday.
We did
Vegas.
one scene from it on First Friday, but
thought
we
you
did
did
the whole
two.
show at the Black Box.
That's what it was, the Black
little,
Box.
little
Yeah.
Las Vegas little theater.
Fabulous little theater. Love that
Yeah, I
theater.
liked it. It was fun. But you and I clicked really quickly, and it's I'm glad we're still friends. I'm just very happy for you that you're following your bliss. Pre-COVID, you and your family actually had a venue set up as well. And I was just very impressed with your drive. Yeah, you've got drive, but you have to have that to, wind up in the situation you're in. I just want to let you know, I'm done fangirling, but we can continue with
That
the.
actually brings
with
up
the
an
interview.
important question.
Yeah.
I mean, COVID hit us so hard that we moved to Texas. So how has your career, obviously you're taking off like crazy. Were there aspects of the lockdowns and basically all of that that helped or hindered where you are or where you want to be?
I think it was a little bit of a break. Because we had a venue, and of course with COVID we had to start minimizing to 50% capacity, and we just can't pay bills that way with
Right.
50% capacity. Like our whole our whole income is based on people coming to do something that they don't have money to do to begin with. Now that nobody's, people are losing their own work and stuff.
Right.
So that was a little bit difficult on me because, well, also that was my guaranteed place to perform. I could, whenever I wanted to, I could host a show. I could direct a play or something. But yeah, like I said, nobody had money to go anyway. And it was really hard for everybody. So we closed down the theater. And funny, actually, I applied for a PUA, the unemployment for performers. And I know that many people did not get it, but I actually fought for like a year to the point where they had to back pay me a whole year's worth.
Yeah, they still haven't answered mine. And I wasn't even doing it under
help.
yeah, they still, I never got unemployment, and I had an actual job. I was a mystery shopper. So I was an actual employee and never even got a response.
Yeah, I don't understand why it happens, but I do know, like I said, I fought for, like, it took a year, but I did it to the point where they had to back pay me a year's worth. And that was when I was committed to kind of investing in my career. I got a vocal coach. I started practicing. I figured if I'm not performing, at least I should keep up the muscles going and stuff.
Yes.
And
Smart.
I got business cards. I worked on branding and made a website. And yeah, so I mean, it kind of, I think it put a bump in everybody's step. But as soon as I had something to help me, I did it. And I think the pandemic kind of showed everybody that we need to be prepared for something like that, where we're just all going to lose our jobs and not have money, and there's no way around it. It's scary, but especially when now we're considered essential or non-essential. It's like, we never had to think about it if I was non-essential.
And who makes that decision anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, why were
Who are you to tell me I'm essential or not?
But small grocery stores and restaurants weren't. It's like, wait, what?
Right. Yeah, so I feel like it was hard on everybody, but I'm hoping that
Sure.
a lot of people came out ahead.
In a way, we did. Melanie.
Kind of, yeah. I
Sort
mean,
of.
like I said, we packed up, and after the third wave was coming, we're like, we're out of here. And I there's part of me that feels guilty because I feel like I deprived Jim his creative outlet. Because with Vegas, I mean, you just walk out and throw a stone, and if you're talented and you have the drive, you can be in a show. And here, not so much.
There are theaters, and I did recently
can
buy
go
a
for
bass
the
guitar
cows.
that I'm gonna learn to play, and that'll be another outlet. It's fine.
It has
get
made him
there.
a better writer, though.
Amazing.
That's
Yeah.
since I'm focusing more on writing. Yeah, I've gotten better at it.
Yeah. And
So
that's why we do a lot of skits and parodies and things for our podcast. And we're not just a talking podcast. We don't have our heads in one direction like you do. We're all
No, I
over the
don't.
dang place, which
I'm-
is probably
you know me,
is
I don't
why
have my head in any
it's so-
direction. Sometimes
it's
up
so
my butt,
hard.
that's about it.
But people are like, oh, what's your podcast about? You're like, this thing. And we're like, oh, I don't know what to do. So it's you're probably a lot easier to market than we are, because we don't know what the hell we're doing half the time. But we have a lot of fun, and that's where plus he does all the voices and all of that. But not opening for Quiet Riot, man, that's badass. That is badass.
Well, I mean, you worked hard to get there. I know.
Yeah.
Like I said, you had the drive, you have the talent, and you've been continually working since the lockdowns ended, and this is in spite of all the stuff going on around you in your life. You don't let it. You can be ticked off about it, but you set it aside and you move forward.
Well, I have deep admiration and respect for people who took those moments, because there were those of us who, great, everything's locked down, so I'm just going to eat Cheetos and drink wine and watch, what was it, the Tiger King or whatever.
Yeah.
which I did. I actually, my career went completely in a different direction, because once all the schools shut down, all of a sudden, a math teacher, oh my God, I was in demand. So for me, it's like things took a completely different path than because I was traveling and doing seminars and all of that just went away. And I I'm not complaining. I mean, it completely changed what I thought I wanted to do. And now I have students and I love them. And it's an amazing, completely different career than I ever thought I would have. Sounds like you did kind of the same thing. You, instead of hunkering down and playing video games and eating Cheetos, you're like, well, how can I use this downtime to better myself? And you did, and it worked. So you're kind of like one of the poster children for, how to use, because they always talk about, how do you use an emergency and this and that. And it's usually to suppress people and all of that. But you were like, no, screw you. I'm not going to be suppressed. I'm going to do my thing. And you did. You did. And I just have deep admiration for that.
So for our friends in Las Vegas, what gigs do you have coming up in Sin
Well,
City?
I have more questions though before we go. We still got another 15 minutes. Don't you cock block my questions.
I'm not. It's just
fun questions here to ask her, because math teacher, you are the opposite. You gave me this new word I never heard of, dyscalculia.
Yeah.
Dyscalculia.
Yeah, dyscalculia.
So math dyslexia. I have never heard of this before. I think this is what my mom had, which is why I had to tutor my brother, because she was terrified of math and hated it. And I always was indifferent to it. But then as I took my brother through algebra and geometry, I fell in love with it. So tell me about this. Do your sevens, because his sevens always turned into like, monsters, and his, signs were always alligators, and he would always turning things into monsters and
Actually, what it is more like having a hard time following patterns. So where most people, for example, I'm really bad at counting money. For some reason, I have to count it 2, 3, 4 times because I lose count really easily. Or counting time, it's the hardest when it ends at 60 and not at 100, and I have the hardest time putting it together. But it's a lot. It's like I said, it's something to do with the patterns. I don't really understand it, but people with dyscalculia are also like, they have things like time blindness. They're bad at following maps. It's just, I don't know. It's like
I stink at maps. I stink at it.
Yeah.
But how do you reconcile that with your musicality? Because music is math.
Oh yeah, that's where it gets hard for me. You know what's funny? So I also perform in Spanish, and in Spanish we don't call our notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B. They call them do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody's like, we're playing this in la, I'm like, what the hell does that mean?
Playing this in la? Oh, that's great.
So I've got to count do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, C, D, E, F, G, A, and that's how.
So do is middle C, I'm assuming. Okay, no, that makes sense.
And then exactly. That's basically how it goes. So.
And then, of course, my favorite movie of all time. Let's see if we can make that a little easier. Do, yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah. That's interesting. So they don't say C, they say do. And that is.
I never knew that.
I've never known that before.
And then another thing is, I can read music, but not quickly. If I know where one note starts, I can kind of follow along from there.
Right.
But sight read, and I wonder if that has something to do with it. It's the following of the pattern.
No, I can't sight read worth beans either. I mean, I know note goes up, voice goes up, but I have to hear it. And once I've got it, I've got it. I need the music in front of me because I'm visual, but I'm not like my mom, where my mom had perfect pitch, drove me crazy. And you'd be like, okay, this is in B flat. And she's like, okay. And she plays the whole thing on her guitar. And she never read music either. But she could tell you.
She was a genius musically.
She could tell you immediately what key we were in and played in that key without a capo. So, I mean, there's different talents, and there's a lot of people. I was watching one of the masterminds with Mariah Carey. She doesn't read music either.
Huh.
And so she's talking about how she sounds out the music and then gets everybody on board with her. And I mean, when it comes to jazz, you have to know the rules before you can break the rules. I'm sorry, my camera's wiggling. I've got a puppy here who wants to go outside, but that means I'd have to turn everything off to take her outside because we're professionals here at CounterCultureWISE. And, and right now she's chewing on my hand because she really wants to go outside. But I try to integrate that with my students. Math is music, music is math, and a lot of them are like, yeah, but I get one and I don't get the other. And there's kind of a beauty in that. There really is. There's kind of a beauty in that because I think that some of us are born with talent and some of us have to learn it. And it doesn't mean that one's right or wrong. But then when you get a combination of the two, like you said, you got a vocal coach and you did all this learning. I mean, that makes you a force to be reckoned with because now you've got both. And that's probably why you're so successful so quickly. Isn't it amazing how it can take like a decade to become an overnight sensation?
To add to my admiration, you were not born here. You were born in Costa Rica.
Dish. Tell us about born in Costa Rica.
Yeah, I think that also has something to do with my drive. So I moved here when I was a baby. I was 1 year old, but my mom came here with me and my brother. We were both babies, and I watched her work really hard her whole life. She didn't speak the language. She went to CSN and learned to speak English, and meanwhile she worked jobs at like Pizza Hut, Carl's Jr., the public library. She worked all kinds of jobs to learn, and to the point where eventually she got a real estate license. She got us a big house, and I've just my whole life been watching her not let her status bring her down. And I think that's kind of where I learned it's never being weak and being just letting yourself give up I've never witnessed that. That's almost not a possibility for me. It just seems like why it doesn't make sense to me. I feel like that's maybe it's become like a natural part of life for me that you just you fall down and you get up. So my mom and we actually opened the theater together because we started hosting a lot of concerts. Her husband, my stepfather, is also a musician. So we started booking all these different venues, and it got really tiresome to haul our equipment everywhere. And that's why we got the venue. So up until the pandemic, it was my mom and I. It was a woman-owned business. We ran everything, and it was kind of woman-owned and also Latino-owned. We put our own like bohemian touch to it, and we were kind of.
I liked the venue a lot. It was really cool.
Yeah, it was kind of the spot for Latino artists too. There was no other place that was kind of like, this is the place where they know there's going to be an audience in Spanish and in English. So we did a lot of bilingual events there.
Do you think you'll ever reopen the venue or one like it?
I don't think so, just because I feel like working in concerts made it not so much fun to be in the concerts and to go to concerts.
That's interesting.
I think what I might do one day is do something a little bit more laid back, like open a cafe or a bookshop where I can have like live music, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But not necessarily have to also perform it, but bring in other artists.
Yeah, and I also hate to say it, but musicians and comedians, like a lot of performers, are kind of divas sometimes.
You think?
They just kind of show up, they do their thing, and they leave. And one thing, we never got that from actors. We loved having actors in our place because they were so respectful. They were like, they are allowing us to use this spot, and we're not going to touch anything without permission.
Mm-hmm.
But comedians would see a guitar on the wall and use it as a prop, and it's like, no, don't touch it. And musicians, we would tell them, don't bring in outside food, and then they'd bring like a 2 liter of Coke and like a bucket of chicken wings. Like there was egos, and I think sometimes you can't escape that, you know, like people, these are people who are going to come in and use your place for one night and then never see you again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
I like your mom a lot, by the way.
Okay, we're not going to go into your mama jokes because I never got to
No
meet her.
mama jokes. Mama jokes.
Okay, so Jim mentioned earlier that you name all of your pets after Beatles characters. Is your mom your influence as far as your musical taste? Did she just raise you right, or did you come by that a different way?
My mom was very into the 60s music, like things like Cat Stevens and the Beatles and Simon and Garfunkel. But it was actually my dad who got me. He gave me all the knowledge. He used to quiz me in the car. It'd be like, who sings this? Who sings that? And I started learning the voices and the styles. And I think that might also be where I learned some of the celebrity stories. I might have heard some from him and maybe started seeking them out. But yeah, my dad was born in the 50s. So like by the time Woodstock happened, he was a teenager. I think that was the 60s and 70s were his time. So I think that's kind of maybe why that's my favorite genre of music.
So it sounds like your parents are the same age as mine, that they just missed the whole hippy dippy thing, but they were influenced by it because they were kids when it
Exactly.
happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to laugh at people that call me a boomer. It's like my mom wasn't even old enough to be a boomer. You know, she just missed it. So so it sounds like they raised you right. It sounds like they gave you I wish more parents would do that they'd have their children explore all the genres of music, jazz, classical, pop, you know, classic rock, which to me was just rock back in the day.
Mhm.
I actually heard Sweet Child of Mine as an elevator music the other day. It broke my heart.
Oh,
It just broke my heart. Oh yeah, Jim's showing his he's showing off his shirt
oh,
there.
nice.
That was fun. We actually saw them at a rodeo. That was one of the
Yeah.
bucket list bands that I
Crappy
never got to
venue,
see.
great show.
I'm gonna let you two talk amongst yourself. I've got to take a doggy outside, or the whole house is going to explode. So,
Are you doing any acting? Have you done anything since soundtracks?
You know, I haven't done anything lately. It's been a little while since I've done any acting. What was the last thing I did? I don't know.
Huh.
I think it's been a while. I know that I directed the play La Llorona Llora at the theater. It's a Mexican story about the weeping woman. She's like
Mhm.
she's like a woman who cries at the lake because her children died, or it's a horror story.
Oh, okay.
I directed a short play about that. That was like bilingual. That was pretty fun. But that was in like maybe 2019. It's been a little while
Yeah.
since I did any theater. Oh no, that's not true. Sorry. In October, I did a play about Jack the Ripper. It was called In the Mind's Eye, and I played Jack the Ripper's last victim, Mary Jane Kelly.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And where was that show?
This was at the Winchester Community Theater.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so there's actually on my Instagram there's a clip of the scene where I was murdered. It was a real Oscar moment.
Wow. Cool. Cool. Um, so I have another question. I know you just wrote this book. Do you do any creative writing outside of that? Are you writing short stories, plays, anything like that?
Not
I mean,
really.
you're pretty busy with your music. I'm assuming that that's really what's taking up your life right now.
Yeah. And it's interesting. People ask me that all the time. I think I don't like writing my own stuff as far as stories or my own music. I like performing other people's stuff. I like interpreting other people's stuff. I think it doesn't come naturally to me, and it feels cheesy and forced. So I would much rather uh kind of interpret somebody else's work who was passionate about it, you know?
Mhm.
It's
There's
just,
something to be said for that.
yeah, I don't know. Somebody told me when we were talking about Quiet Riot, my friend was like, "Why don't we do originals?" And I was like, "Because I want it to be good." You know, it's not. I would rather do what works. And my mom is actually a writer. She writes poetry and short stories. And
Oh,
maybe I've gotten like the grammar part of it down. I am good at writing, but I'm not good at creating and making stuff up. It doesn't feel right to me.
nothing's for everybody, you know. So I just was curious because just what I've heard of your podcast, you are a good writer, at least you know, the nonfiction part of it, just the facts, ma'am. You know,
Mm.
that you were really good with that. Um, it's just it's like I said before, it fascinates me the mindset that an O.J. Simpson or a Phil Spector would have, that okay, I'm respected in this field and I've made a lot of money in this field, and I guess that entitles me to do all sorts of evil things. I mean, politicians do it. You virtually expect politicians to do it, but when it's just a celebrity, somebody who's had an impact. I mean, Phil Spector and Bill Cosby, just to give myself as an example, they were both influences on my life. I mean, Phil Spector overproduced the Beatles' Let It Be, did the Ramones, and then all that stuff he did
The Supreme.
earlier. Yeah, the Ronettes and all of those bands created Righteous Brothers, virtually um, a genre of rock all of its own. And, you know, you listen to that, you get emotional. Even now, knowing what we know about it, the music is still amazing. Knowing what I know now about Bill Cosby, am I going to buy any more of his records or watch his TV shows? Probably not. You know, I don't see it. It's kind of icky. You know, just I guess that's a good way to put it. It's just icky.
It's icky. That goes back to separating the art from the artist. Like
Yeah.
Bill, hard to separate him when he's pretending to be America's dad, and we know that he's exploited women by playing that character.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And going back to like what you were saying about how these people they know they can get away with it because they're loved. Everybody already loves it, but it's
Mhm.
also people have gotten away with it before. People of
Right.
our life have gotten away with it. We can figure it out. It's like we have protection, you know.
Mhm. Oh. And have you been in touch with any of our partners in crime that we perform together with?
Not in a long time. I was talking to Matt about. I know he's working on some new plays, Matt Martello. But other than that, I've really been working in the music scene and just haven't been involved in theater very much.
I don't blame you. I mean, I think one of the reasons that you're starting to get these bigger gigs is because you're concentrating, you're kind of narrowing it down, your focus, and I think that's probably a key to it as well. So tell our audience, because a lot of our friends who listen to this show are Las Vegas types. Where are you going to be appearing in Vegas in the near future?
Okay, so I have a show coming up next weekend. I don't know if this will air in time. It's on Friday, June 16th, and this will be at Pine Hollow Winery here in Vegas. It's over on
Oh,
Charles.
nice.
Yeah, it's a nice little winery, a really family-owned place, really, really cute. And then after that, we're actually going to take a break for a little bit to try to prepare for the show in December.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
I grinned from ear to ear when I saw that Facebook post. That was like really great. Because that is not just any venue. That is sacred ground to classic rock fans. So it's like really, really great.
I know.
I believe my wife has returned. Let's welcome back the fabulous Melanie Hope.
All right, dogs have been pottied. Everybody has peanut butter Kongs, so hopefully
Yay.
we bought ourselves a couple more minutes here.
We only have a few more
I was
minutes.
gonna
She's
say, it
gotta
sounded like
go,
Jim was
so.
already doing the wrap up, but you have been, Didi, such a joy.
Thank you.
I love your backstory and where you came from, and you know, the bilingual and your parents. I mean, you are the full package. Did he made you go through all of where folks can find you?
Not
And-
yet. We like to wrap up the same way we
What is your
start.
next show?
So that I did go over.
That you did do. Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Jim's doing his job. I just wasn't here for it. Okay. Now I have one more question before we go. I have never had any, because I always ask for some fun facts in case we run out of things to talk about, which literally never happens. But this one kind of threw me over. You have a weird phobia of smashed watermelons. So
Not a fan.
Gallagher,
not a Gallagher fan.
How do you even know that?
So I know that's weird. If I see a watermelon that's been like dropped and smashed on the floor, for some reason my brain goes, what if that was a human head?
Okay.
I don't think that's for some reason. I think that's a very YouTube generation thing, because that's what they would do.
Really? Somebody told me that they used to use like they used to use watermelons in safety commercials and put helmets on them and drop them.
Right.
Maybe I saw that in my childhood. I don't know, but they freak me out. Like if they're smashed or if it's just cut up and like open, like I don't know. It's my head goes brains.
But not pumpkins.
No, not so bad.
Okay.
Okay.
It's got to be the red. It's got to be the red. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So Didi West, the YouTube generation who sees watermelons as brains. All right. So give us a lowdown on where folks can find you and remind them of how to get tickets to your next show.
Oh yeah. So you can find me at DidiWestMusic.com. I'm also going to put a link up there for the tickets. Otherwise, you can go to the Whiskey A Go-Go's website and buy the tickets there too. It's on December 8th. And again, we're opening for Quiet Riot with a bunch of other cool bands. I'm also on Instagram, but under the tag, I'm Didi West. I'm on TikTok as Didi West LV. And I'm on Facebook under Didi West LV. And also, if you want to look up my podcast, it's called Broken Limelight. It is also on Facebook, just under facebook.com/Broken Limelight. Or you can go to brokenlimelight.com, or it's on all the places where you can listen to podcasts. So Spotify.
Same place we are.
Yeah, same as you. And actually, I recently released a song on a single on Spotify. If you want to listen to it, it's called
Very
Just
cool.
Like.
Say it again.
It's called Just Like Heaven.
Just Like Heaven. All right.
The cover of the song by The Cure.
I was gonna ask if it was the Cure cover, right? That's a great song.
No, you guys with your music. All right, Didi, it's been a true pleasure. I'm sorry I had to take off there, but duty calls when you're the mom of fur babies. We try to get them to do all the things before, and you know how.
Sometimes we're successful.
Anyways, this was awesome. You are so amazing. Please, please, please come back on the show with your next endeavor. We will shamelessly plug whatever it is that you're doing. Your book, can we find that on all the places you find books?
Yeah, it's on Amazon, and also there's a link on my website. This is my book.
And I think Broken Limelight is a brilliant
It's
title.
a brilliant show name.
Look how thick that puppy is. Hold that up again. How thick is that thing?
Oh, it's thick. It's like 540 pages.
Holy crap, girl. That was a lot of research.
Yeah, so I've got 30 cases in here. I'm not sure if it's mirrored or not. Is it mirrored?
No, it looks good.
No, it looks fine.
So
wow, Brittany, yeah, River Phoenix. Oh, my heart breaks for that one.
Mine too. Did you know that he was in a cult growing up?
I didn't.
Yeah, listen to my podcast.
I will. Folks, head on over to Broken Limelight for your podcast needs, but make sure you do all the things here as well, like share, subscribe, spread the news, and we will have more guests like the magical, mystical, beautiful Didi West on. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, and we will have you on again very soon, Didi. Thank you again.
Thank you guys. This was so much fun. I appreciate it.